Well, hello, Dana.
Well, hey, Rose. We're back.
We're back. And we're excited because we have part 2 of our interview with Roly Acosta. And part 1 was so awesome. Wait till you hear what we've got ready for you in this episode. But I have to start by asking you, what are you loving and not loving, Dana Boss?
All right. A couple weeks ago, a big report came out from this organization that had been running a 6-month-long study on the 32-hour work week. In other words, a 4-day work week. It was primarily situated in the UK, I think. And the majority of organizations have chosen to stick with it. And again, the study's over. You could go back to the way you were doing it before, but they've chosen not to. And again, that doesn't mean they're committed to it forever, but it does mean that they're not seeing any incredible negative impacts. And they obviously must be seeing enough positive impacts. There's a lot more I want to dig into.
It's a fascinating study because can I tell you a super quick story on what you're loving? I remember one time I was on a customer meeting in China, and the team was leaving the building. We were all leaving the building at 6:30. The meeting had just gotten over. And as we were walking out, thousands of people were coming back to work, and they had gone downstairs for dinner and were going back to work. So do I believe in that model? Let the record state no. But I always think it's an interesting dynamic about what's the competitive productivity field look like versus the employee sensitivities, and how do you balance that while still competing in the marketplace? That was all I wanted to add to that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've told you this and I've told our listeners this. I just feel like this is this moment where how to approach the workplace and the work, quote, week is just wide open right now. So I'm just very curious. And I do think it needs to evolve. The standard 5-day work week was, in the US anyway, was set up in the 1920s. Just very curious about the different things people are trying out.
So what are you not liking?
What I'm not liking, Rose, honestly, this is something that you mentioned to me that you overheard that has stayed on my mind, which is that I think you were in like an airport and somebody's talking on the phone and they said, I hate working for women.
Oh, yeah. It was a woman.
And it was a woman. So I've heard that many times. I have heard women say they hate working for women. And the thing that gets me is just, it is entirely possible that you could have a career where you work for some women and the chemistry wasn't there. It just bums me out when people then generalize to, well, it just sucks working for women in general, and it would be the same.
Because I'm sure you've never worked for a bad male leader.
I just hate it when people generalize like that. I'm not denying their experience. Maybe they had the unfortunate situation, but it just bums me out. It's the same as if saying, oh, well, I guess I don't really like working for Black people, or I don't like working for this. This horrible generalization based on a couple experiences bums me out.
Yeah, it's sickening.
Yes. Okay. But enough of that. That's a downer. What about you? What are you loving or not loving?
You know what I'm loving?
What?
I'm loving the focus on women's sports. I'm loving the fact that the coverage on things like March Madness is, I wouldn't say it's equivalent, but it's getting close. The ticket sales are great. They've already said that, the WNBA draft tickets have been sold out, which is like unheard of. Women's soccer's getting a good lift at the professional rank. So I love what I'm loving. I'm loving the support of women in athletics. Number one. What am I not loving? I'm not loving Mr. and Mrs. Judgy and Mr. and Mrs. Keyboard Warriors. There was news recently that Kate Middleton came down with cancer, and the coverage and the conspiracy theories and the constant nagging of a human being that is battling an incredibly horrible life crisis and trying to probably figure out how to tell her 3 small children.
Oh, she did. If you watched her video, she said that was a big part of it, was we've been working hard to figure out how to share this with them in a way they'll understand.
While every Tom, Mary, Jane, and Joe are hiding behind their social media accounts and their keyboards on their phones and computers, trying to figure out what's going wrong and being unkind. And what I don't like is the lack of human decency.
That was a moment where we all had to realize our best selves had not been at play. I don't mean every single person, but a lot of people. And I'll honestly include myself in that a little bit, in the sense that I didn't buy into, he's having an affair or this or that. But I started looking at, if there was an article about why is Kate Middleton not showing, I'd click on it, right? It just was a moment that revealed the modern, how we can show up in a not great way as humans.
Now, on the flip side, there are people that do show up as humans in a great way. And I got to meet one of those people when we interview Roly Acosta. So we have part 2 of that interview. So Dana, why don't you give us a couple nuggets on what we're going to hear?
Yeah, so we will continue with him, and we are going to hear, first of all, he has not only led his own company, but he has also been a member of a number of industry associations and consortiums, and he was president of the Utility and Transportation Contractors Association of New Jersey. And it's just a totally different situation than when you're running your own company. And he's got some interesting insights on how to do that effectively. He talks about imposter syndrome, something that many people can relate to, and also shares a really clear, definitive take on how his organization approached work during the pandemic and what their model is post-pandemic. So just lots of interesting stuff, and it'll be a new point of view on the workplace. So buckle up.
Up until now, Roly, we've been talking about leadership and management within the confines of you leading JAG, right? Where you're clearly the leader. And, your reporting structure and your hierarchy as such. I also noted that you, I think it was in 2021, correct me if I'm wrong, became president of the UTCA, which is the Utility and Transportation Contractors Association. And in that environment, you have to walk in to a room of likely your peers and other collaborators in the industry and provide not only leadership, but management. So if you would contrast those two scenarios, how did you approach that position with the UTCA differently and similarly, and what worked and what didn't work, what was transferable, what wasn't, between your president CEO job and your role in your industry consortium?
So when I first got on the board of the UTCA, it was like an honor and a privilege. I grew up with my dad going to UTCA meetings, with him having been president. So that organization was very meaningful to me. So the first board meeting, I look around, first thing I get is imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing here? These are like the giants of New Jersey construction. And then, and some of my peers have known me since I was like a kid. I'm 50 now. I met some of these people when I was 12 years old, and now I'm shoulder to shoulder with them. I'm like, and again, it goes right back to one of the first questions is, well, how am I going to earn their respect? They know me as Juan's son. Well, I have a name. It's Roly, and I have a position. It's president CEO. I'm just not Juan's son. I'm actually a person. But it was, embracing that part of it being a privilege, and that that I was there only, one of the few, being president. I was only the second generational president of the UTCA in its 50 plus year history. So that was really awesome. And then you start to understand is that I was voted to be president. So my peers have that respect for me. I don't have to keep trying to prove myself. I'm there to contribute with them. And then you look at the list of presidents, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm like, that guy's a legend. That person's a legend. You're going down the list. And there's Roly Acosta. I'm like, that's pretty cool. One of the things I took from that part of the leadership and the management of that group is, you're there to lead an association. You're there to lead an industry. You're not there to lead for yourself or your own company. So you learn at some point how you have to check your self-interest at the door. And you have to remind yourself sometimes you're there to represent asphalt pavers. You're there to represent, all levels, treatment plant contractors, underground contractors, trenchless contractors. And they're working for agencies that we may not, or I may not work for, but you have to represent them in that meeting. And I think that was really important, is how do you grasp that part of it where it may not be for me and I'm sacrificing my time for the industry as a whole. And that was important. That was a big lesson that you learn from, the presidents that came before you and the ones that came after you, is what does that sacrifice entail? And that was, but hearing from peers, hey, great job, and we're really, really proud of the work that you're doing as president here. And I was tasked, which was another great experience, was working with Dana on what the 5 to 10 year initiative was for the UTCA. And being a person that went to the first UTCA convention my first convention in 1988, to being inducted as president in 2021, that's a long journey. And I have more years ahead of me on that board. Is to be tasked to lead that initiative was pretty awesome. And then to say, hey, this industry, this association, what it's meant to me, we'll be able to, in that work, leave our own stamp on it.
You mentioned imposter syndrome. And I know it's something that impacted my early career as a leader, where I just would get up every day and go, how am I in this position? I'm the daughter from a steel worker and a woman that worked at a bank from a small town. And here I am leading this organization. And it took, I would call it professional therapy for me to get through it. And I guess my question for you is how did you manage it? First, thank you for acknowledging it. And secondly, you talked about some of the feedback that you got helped you get through it. Was there anything else in particular that helped you face and deal with that imposter syndrome? And it probably happened at JAG too, I'm assuming.
No, it happened at, when I was 7, 8 years old. It probably happened. I just didn't know that's what it was called. When you look at my background, we're a successful family. Now, it was a very humble background. I was raised by a single mother until, mom married who I consider my dad. And I moved from Miami, Florida to Toms River, New Jersey. And I went from big city to small town. And, Cuban kid shows up to 6th grade with a tan and a Fila jumpsuit, and everybody's looking at him like, who's this guy? So I was already like trying to figure out who I was. And then you advance it, and, I get to my dream college. I'm 5'8". I weighed 165 pounds, and I'm a collegiate football player at Princeton University, playing wide receiver. I'm at the school of my dreams, still playing college football, going into a huddle in a stadium full of people going, what am I doing here? And, I walk campus with my kids, and they're like, Dad, where's that sidewalk that you went between the library and your dorm? And you'd look up and say, what am I doing here? And so I think it was a healthy embrace of what am I doing here, that you said, no, I belong here. Now let's move forward from that. Good. I said it. I got it off my chest. I belong here. And the same thing, with the family business was, I had a fast pace up to the top. Some of it was, my dad had a health issue, and it kind of advanced my career a little bit faster, but it was the faith and trust of my dad as a leader that got me over that uncomfortableness and of, you're not an imposter. You've earned at least the right to have a shot at this. So imposter syndrome is, I don't see it as fear of failing, but it's more of like, hey, it's okay to have it, right? But what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to it? And again, it's sitting in a room. I'm in another association called the Moles. You talk about the titans of the construction industry, and they're like, hey, Roly, how are you? How you doing? I'm like, oh my God, that guy knows who I am. and he wants to talk to me. But I still enjoy that part of it. I still enjoy that there's that little kid in me that still thinks, should I be here? Because it gives me that edge to continue to drive, keeps me honest, keep driving, that at any minute, don't let that little kid be right. But let's keep pushing forward and earning that respect, earning where you are, because there's plenty of people to check you back if your humbleness gets too big. And I credit that too is, I have a group of friends from college, from my Princeton teammates, and you talk about being in a room, and they are successful scientists, they are successful entrepreneurs, they are successful financial managers. They do so many great things, but we make sure we each don't forget where we came from And that's healthy. That's a healthy part of it, but we also congratulate each other tremendously in our successes so that you never feel that you didn't belong there.
One of the things, Roly, that we are asking every guest is the impact of the pandemic on how you work. Every organization and every industry was impacted and has had to make its choices on how to sort of work going forward. So you have staff both in offices and construction sites, and sort of what's your approach? How have you responded?
So we were fortunate in 2020 when the pandemic hit that construction, at least in New Jersey and most of the states that we worked in, were considered critical. So that allowed us to stay operational, right? So, but we had to make sure we managed our response to the pandemic safely and carefully in the best interest of the employees and then our business. But then you look at construction, all right? Can an iron worker work from home, Rose? I don't think so. Your father did not have iron
What's your dad
worker,
think, Rose?
right? Yeah,
No,
you can't do that.
He probably wishes he could, but he could
So
not.
our tradespeople aren't work from home. How do you allow, how do we grant work from home to a project engineer or project manager working on those projects when craft labor can't be work from home? And then we took it further. We said, hey, if they're working in the field, we're going to find a way to work safely in the office. And it was rolling everyone in. And I would share that since, I'm going to say July, August of 2020, we've been 100% work from the office. Has it hurt us? Has it hurt us in recruiting a little bit? Sure, with some of the support services roles, payroll, APAR, financial services part of it. Yeah, that hurts. And there are other support staff in estimating or project engineering that would like work from home options. But we've honored the tradespeople, the craftsmen in the craftspeople in the field, and said, if you need to work from the field and you got to show up, then we're going to show up for you. And that's where we are. And I get some grief. I get some of that feedback. Right?
That gift.
That gift of the gift of feedback, and it maybe not what I want to hear, but overall the management team is aligned that, we did come up with a work from home policy. We relocated one business from Florida to Texas, and there were important people we wanted to hang on to. Okay, we're going to make sure you can still work for us. And there are some engineers from that may work, from another state, but we want to work with them. Sure. But to have it as an overarching policy, we just didn't follow that path. We wanted to really be working in the collaboration, especially for new employees, young employees. They need to be next to the seasoned people. They need to know what it's like to leave your cell phones face down, right? Because that makes us feel like it's not on, and be collaborating in a meeting, estimating, figuring out how we're going to build this job. And we can accomplish certain things in the virtual world, but nothing beats being in that room and having those open and honest discussions about how we're going to win that work and how we're going to build that work. So we've stuck to, hey, we're open for business, and that means business is in the office or in the field.
So one of the narratives that we've heard in the media that we've been asking everyone is around the new workforce. People just recently graduating from college, entering the workforce. And the narrative is that, there's a strong reticence to being in the office, and that they're demanding a work from home, almost exclusive environment. Our research is saying quite the opposite. So maybe you can comment on any of the new hires that you brought on board and what their feeling is once they get into the office. Are they glad that they're in that environment? Do they find value in the collaboration, as you just noted? So maybe narrow the response to some of those new hires and what their feedback is on the policy that you have.
It's been positive. And like I mentioned before, have we been hurt with some good candidates? Yes. Our HR director kind of flags when the immediate question in the interview is, what's your work from home policy? We understand. Sometimes they're just poking around. Is there an option? Sometimes just want to know will not impact my decision. But if they're working in the office, well, let's have touch points. Let's make sure that it's meaningful for them to be in the office. It's meaningful for them to be reporting in the field. And I'm very proud, very happy to see that generation that's coming out of college right now, especially in our field. they want to go to work. We work in some remote locations, and some of them are putting their hands up. It says, "Oh, you need me to work away from home for 3 weeks and be on a barge in the middle of Lake Champlain for 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and then rotating crews." I'm in. I was like, wow, that is refreshing to hear versus the narrative. Going to work doesn't sell ads, doesn't sell papers, doesn't sell
Right.
commercials. Everybody's going to work. There's
Right.
nothing to report. It's the revolt against going to work. We're going to work from home. And so to me is having a good response and good having that crop of new hires. It's been great to see, and it's rejuvenated some of our senior staff, having eager people to work with. They love it, and it's that whole, they're trying to brain dump as much as they've known all these years into sponges, and are again fortunate that none of our senior staff feels threatened. They feel it's an opportunity to mentor and teach and keep our company going forward. So again, very, very fortunate to be in that position with those two different levels of experience working together.
And that's really interesting. I didn't know what your policy was. I didn't know what your answer was to that question. And it's great to hear it, I'm certainly, my point of view is certainly revisiting what a work week can look like is fine. But I can't quite fathom a completely virtual you know what I mean? Like I do feel like whether or not an organization wants to talk about some days can be work from home, I certainly can't fathom all days being work from home. I mean, just no way.
Right. Yeah. Again, we're not saying there's never work from home. We know there's extenuating circumstances. Somebody has someone ill, but as an overall, hey, this is how we're going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just want to highlight a point that you made. Actually, it's 2 points, but they're very linked. One, I have tremendous fear of brain drain as populations of skill sets and resources hit the retirement age without that ability to transfer the knowledge in what I would call, and I hope this isn't controversial, but in the foxhole moments, right? There's no teaching like moments of crisis or moments of issue. And it's really hard to do that in terms of the collaboration required when you're on a Zoom call to really get the intensity of the situation. So I thought that was a critical point, that brain drain and that mentorship being potentially lost without that face-to-face and day-to-day involvement. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a comment we hadn't heard before, and I think it's a really super valid.
Yeah. Well, Roly, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I just have really enjoyed this, and I love seeing you. I really enjoyed seeing you so much. I remembered you from when we worked together at UTCA, and I knew that sort of the way you were approaching leadership and management, I felt like there was things to learn from there. And so thank you for doing this.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to have a fun conversation.
Now, what a fabulous part 2 of our interview with Roly. He's such a great leader and lovely human being. And thank you for the introduction and getting him on the pod.
I'm sad it's over. I'm sad our interview with him is over.
I'm sad it's over too. And I have to tell you, there was one thing that really hit home for me is, he started talking about his role as the president of the UTCA. It's a hot take on imposter syndrome. Because what people who are entering their management and leadership journeys don't realize is how many people actually face imposter syndrome. I'll never forget the time where, I was meeting with my executive coach. I was blessed to have Barbara Curry, who we hope to have on the pod shortly, as my executive coach. And she asked me a question at dinner. She says, "What's your biggest fear?" And I said, "I don't have any." She's like, fears. I am a strong leader, female leader. I don't have fears. And she goes, "I just want you to think about that." So I came back the next day and my quote unquote, I said, "I'm a fraud. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know how I got this job." And I was facing what was horrible imposter syndrome. So to hear him talk about it and to hear other interviews that we've had, I'll bring it up as well. It shows what a pervasive feeling it is. So don't be afraid of it. So that's kind of the hot take. Imposter syndrome is pretty prevalent. Don't let it get you down. Keep working, keep striving, keep going.
And it's certainly like, I don't know one person who is put into a manager of people role. Like it could be frontline that doesn't feel totally unprepared. And then you realize like, well, I thought everyone in these types of roles like had the formula or something. And you're like, nope, we all just started and like tried to figure it out. Right. And
there's no outline. There is no outline.
Yeah. There are some skills you can develop that will help you a bunch. But I mean, in general, you just give it a try, right? And you keep evolving.
Dive in.
Yeah, you dive in. And here's the thing about I would have to say he has the healthiest take on imposter syndrome I have ever heard. I mean, he said, first of all, most people, when they bring up imposter syndrome, are like, yeah, I think I'm a fraud. I don't know. And he's like, oh, yeah. I'm always wondering what I'm doing here. But you know what? That's okay. I'm going to let it drive me. You know what I mean? Like the energy around it was so great. And he was like, I think it's just important to have a healthy embrace because it gives me an edge. Right? Like I've just never heard that take on it. And I just found it so fun and refreshing.
It's awesome. So what was your hot take?
I was really interested. Well, one, I was interested in his take on the pandemic and how we work. You know, like we have folks that we expect to be out in the field and we are not going to be sitting at home. We are going to be in the office in our setting. And I respect the point of view, you know what I mean? And I think more than anything, you have to articulate a point of view and a rationale for whatever your work model is these days.
And the only ad I'd put on that is I loved his clarity.
Yeah.
And it also goes to show how different work environments can sometimes drive different approaches and different decisions based on the environment that you're in. And to his point, when you're asking people to drive far distances and work 24/7 in extreme conditions sometimes, while the office people are, wearing their sweatpants at home,
right,
drinking their coffee, probably a bad look in terms of collaboration and teamwork. So I think it's great to understand how you have to really understand your environment as you make some of those critical decisions. But what an excellent episode. And thank you, Roly, for your insights, and learnings. Until next time.
See you later.